Militants keep firing rockets at Israel as strikes in Gaza kill 15. Dated August 6, 2022 at 12:18 p.m. EDT published August 6, 2022 at 6:36 a.m. EDT. Rockets are fired from Gaza into Israel amid Israel-Gaza fighting on August 6, 2022. Ibrahim Abu Mustafa/Reuters. Jerusalem, Israeli forces and militants in Gaza continue to exchange air and rocket attacks Saturday after Israeli airstrikes that have killed 15 inside the enclave since Friday, including the leader of Palestinian Islamic Jihad Brigade, and injured more than 140 others. There was no sign of let-up in the fighting, and the Israeli military said it had prepared for its operations to last at least a week. Militants fired more than 449 rockets toward Israel in retaliation overnight and through Saturday, according to the Israeli military. Emergency response officials reported no significant injuries from the rocket fire, as thousands of residents of southern and central Israel sheltered in safe rooms or community air raid bunkers. 2 civilians reportedly received minor injuries as they ran for cover, and 2 soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces (IDF) received minor shrapnel wounds, officials said. Multiple brush fires were reported in areas where rockets fell. Late Saturday, the barrage was directed toward Tel Aviv, Israel's major population center, where residents reported hearing explosions as the rockets were shot down by Israel's air defense system. The IDF said its Iron Dome air defense network had intercepted about 95% of the rockets. There were no reports of significant property damage. Officials said that 81 of the launches had fallen short and landed in Gaza and that 14 others had plunged into the sea. The IDF continued to carry out airstrikes in Gaza, targeting what it said were rocket manufacturing, storage and launch sites. An official said the strikes had killed several mid-level commanders. The fatalities inside the enclave have included multiple civilians, including a 5-year-old girl, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. An Israeli official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive issue, said the military was aware of those reports and would investigate the circumstances of the child's death. He said the strikes are carefully planned to avoid harming bystanders, but that the militants make perfect accuracy impossible by embedding themselves and their weapons within the civilian population. At least 2 large buildings near the beach in Gaza City were demolished Saturday. The Israeli official said the buildings had housed command and control centers used by Palestinian Islamic Jihad (PIJ). The residents were warned and the buildings evacuated before the strikes occurred, he said. Military officials said they launched a preemptive attack after detecting signs that PIJ was moving equipment into place for an imminent attack on Israeli civilians and communities near Gaza. Tensions have been mounting between the sides since Israel arrested a PIJ leader in the West Bank on Tuesday. The initial strike Friday killed Taser al-Jabari, a top PIJ leader, when a missile destroyed part of the Palestine Tower apartment building. Suddenly, without warning, there was a big explosion and the window glass started to fly, said Aman Abu Ghanima, 51, who lives in a building next to the blast site. She said she and her family of 6, including a pregnant daughter-in-law, ran from the scene and slept with relatives. It was the second time their apartment has been damaged by Israeli airstrikes. It was also damaged during the 2014 war, she said. Israel also stepped up its overnight arrests of suspected PIJ operatives outside Gaza. The IDF said forces had taken 20 men into custody after raids near Hebron, Ramallah, and other West Bank locations. There was no sign that Hamas, the rival militant group that governs Gaza, was taking part in the attacks against Israel, although the group released statements condemning Israel's airstrikes. Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political chief, said Israel bears full responsibility for the fighting, and in a call with Egyptian mediators, he demanded an immediate halt to the IDF strikes. Biden backs Palestinian state, calls for accounting of journalists' death. Hamas, which maintains its own stock of weapons and has fought multiple wars with Israel, has not always joined in PIJ fights. Hamas sat out several days of exchanges between PIJ and Israel in 2019 after Israel killed another top PIJ commander. Hamas's actions now could be pivotal in determining whether the fighting escalates. Diplomats from the United Nations and Egypt said they are working to calm tensions. A delegation from Cairo was expected to arrive in Gaza on Saturday, according to media reports. The most important thing is whether Hamas is going to intervene or not, said Yossi Kubawasser, a former head of intelligence research for the Israeli army. Right now, I think they are sitting on the issue. They are offering moral support to Islamic Jihad, sure, but they don't hint that they are getting involved. The situation is very fragile. Israeli officials hope that conditions are right for a relatively quick end to the violence. In the year since Israel and Hamas fought an 11-day war that killed more than 250 Palestinians and 13 people inside Israel, 14,000 Gazans have received permits to work in Israel, a source of vital cash inside in the enclave that has dried up since Israel sealed the borders amid tensions this week. Rebuilding, mostly funded by outside donors, had begun to pick up pace in recent months. On a military level, analysts say Hamas has not had time to fully replenish the supply of rockets it fired in the last war, a possible disincentive to engage in another major battle now. But opinions within the organization are known to be divided, with some Hamas officials outside of the enclave more eager for an escalation. For civilians, the situation inside Gaza is deteriorating quickly. Officials on Saturday shut down the enclave's sole power plant, which already operated at limited capacity, because of a lack of fuel to run generators. There were lines to buy groceries even as occasional IDF strikes landed elsewhere in the enclave of 2 million people. No inventory has crossed from Israel since Tuesday. Ahmad Jaber, 23, had been in line outside a bakery in Gaza City for half an hour and had another hour to wait until he could shop for the 13 people, including 7 children, who live in his house. We do not know how long the war will last, he said. Many families said they had passed a sleepless night, unsettled by the airstrikes in Gaza and the even more frequent explosions of interceptor missiles in the surrounding skies. There is no safe place in Gaza, said Amr Mansur as he awaited his turn to buy bread Saturday, something he knows to do any time the fighting flares. There is no hope, no future. I'm 21 years old, and I have experienced 4 wars. Some were grieving those killed. Those mourning included the family of Alaa Kadum, the 5-year-old who was killed by shrapnel or debris on Mansara Street. What was she guilty of, this little girl? Her grandfather Riyad Kadum said in a tearful video posted on YouTube. She was getting ready to start kindergarten. What was her guilt?